Number 10. North Carolina Shipwreck. The SS North Carolina was a steamship that sank off the South Carolina coast over 180 years ago in the summer of 1840 after it collided with its sister ship, the Governor Dudley. Thankfully, everyone on board survived, but the ship's cargo, including a trove of rare gold coins, were lost. The currency alone is estimated to be worth tens of millions of dollars in today's money. The hoard is thought to include coins from the US Mint in Dahlonega, Georgia, which opened just 2 years before the wreck, according to a statement from Blue Water Ventures International and Endurance Exploration Group, who are working together to recover the artifacts. Divers commissioned by the companies found some gold coins, marble objects, dinnerware, and brass spikes that were used to build the ship. This wasn't the first time someone tried to salvage the North Carolina's treasure, but doing so is easier said than done, with low visibility in the murky water and the tendency for sharks to congregate in the area. On top of that, many of the treasures are buried beneath at least 3 feet of sand, and digging them up would require expensive machinery. Nevertheless, people continue to try in hopes of getting their hands on some of the gold coins or luxury jewelry left behind by passengers. Number 9. Roman Era Hoard. During a recent family vacation to the Spanish coastal town of Xabia, brothers-in-law Luis Lenz Pardo and Cesar Jimeno Alcala decided to go snorkeling. Their original goal was to clean up trash, but plans changed when one of the men noticed something glimmering on the Mediterranean seafloor. He went to investigate and discovered that it was a shiny coin. After dusting it off, he saw that it featured an ancient Greek or Roman-like face. The coin was in a small hole, and the pair suspected that there were more where it came from. They returned with a Swiss Army knife and found 7 more coins. Lenz Pardo and Jimeno Alcala reported the discovery to local authorities, who dispatched a team of archaeologists to the site. They found 53 gold coins dating between 364 and 408 AD, when the Western Roman Empire was in decline. The coins are extremely well preserved, bearing identifiable images of the Roman emperors Valentinian I, Valentinian II, Theodosius I, Arcadius, and Honorius. There's only one coin with an unidentifiable portrait. It's one of the largest Roman coin hoards ever found in Europe, and it's especially valuable because it could help to shed light on the circumstances surrounding the empire's final days. Researcher Jaime Molina Vidal told Live Science that the discovery reflects the type of fear someone might have when burying their treasure hoard to hide it from invaders. No nearby shipwrecks have been found, further pointing toward the possibility that someone went out of their way to conceal their hoard. Number 8. Battersea Shield. While excavating at the Thames River in London, ahead of the construction of the Chelsea Bridge in 1857, workers dredged up an ancient bronze shield. It consists of several different pieces being held together by rivets and is decorated in the style of the Celtic Latin culture. Back when it was being used, it would have functioned as a covering for a wooden shield. Known as the Battersea Shield, it's widely considered one of the most significant pieces of Celtic art ever found in Britain. But its origins are largely a mystery. For one, nobody can say with certainty when the shield was made or used. The Museum of London, which houses the artifact, dated it to sometime between 350 and 50 BC. But some experts have speculated that it may have been made during the early 1st century AD. The workers who discovered the Battersea Shield also found skeletons and large amounts of Roman and Celtic weapons. This led some historians to conclude that the shield was left behind during Julius Caesar's invasion of Britain in 54 BC. But most modern scholars challenge this view. The bronze plating that the shield is made with is too thin to have protected someone during combat, and it bears no signs of battle-related damage, so it's likely that the Battersea Shield was made as a status symbol or a parade piece and deposited into the river as a religious offering. Number 7. Head of Hadrian. The Roman Emperor Hadrian is perhaps best known for building an 80-mile-long wall across Britain to separate the so-called barbarians from the Romans. Over 2 centuries ago, a bronze head depicting Hadrian was pulled from the River Thames in the heart of Roman Britain, which is now London. It was likely once attached to a full-body statue of the emperor that probably stood in a public forum. The statue would have been 1¼ times life-sized according to the British Museum. Hadrian was known for traveling extensively throughout Europe. It was common for cities to rebuild and beautify as a result of these imperial visits, so it makes sense that people would erect a statue to commemorate the ruler. There are plenty of surviving marble sculptures of Hadrian, but there aren't many bronze examples, making the head of Hadrian both rare and mysterious. Number 6. Riverware Horde. A pair of British divers named Gary and Trevor Bankhead have made hundreds of dives at historical sites around the world. While working under a contract with the British government in 2007, they uncovered a trove of gold and silver treasures from the River Wear outside Durham Castle. The 32 objects, which were once owned by the Queen, the Pope, and other leaders, included goblets, medals, crucifixes, and more. They date back to different periods, including the medieval, Saxon, and Roman eras. The Bankhead brothers also found a solid gold Japanese coin, marking the 60th renovation of the Grand Shrine of Ise, the country's most important Shinto temple. But what was it doing in England? Well, the explanation is surprisingly simple. The 24-carat piece belonged to Archbishop of Canterbury Michael Ramsay, who received it during a 1973 trip to Japan. While visiting, he met Nikkyo Niwano, the president of the country's Buddhist movement. The coin is worth around $16,500 in today's money. Altogether, the divers uncovered hundreds of treasures known as the Riverware Horde. At least 30 belonged to Ramsay. In addition to the Japanese coin, Ramsay's items included a silver trowel from India, an 18-karat gold medallion, and a 19th century Russian icon. Among the other objects, there was a brothel token featuring a woman's legs. It was the first of its kind ever found in the UK. The collection also included a 13th century seal and a brooch depicting Queen Elizabeth and Sir Walter Raleigh, a historically famous statesman and explorer. Nobody knows how Ramsay's belongings ended up in the river. One theory holds that he threw them in there as a gift to the locals sometime after his retirement to Durham in 1974 and before his death in 1988. Number 5. Long-lost beer ingredients. Treasure comes in many forms, depending on what's important to the person looking for it. For amateur diver and explorer Steve Hickman, that treasure was beer. Back in the 1980s, he encountered a sunken ship called the Wallachia off the Scottish coast. The Wallachia sank on a foggy day in 1895 after colliding with another vessel. It had just left Glasgow and was laden with cargo, including thousands of bottles of different kinds of alcoholic beverages. The cold water that the ship sank in helped to preserve the booze while it sat for over 100 years on the seafloor. After stumbling upon the wreck, Hickman began diving down there periodically to retrieve whiskey, gin, and beer. Over the years, he collected dozens of bottles. Earlier this year, a team accompanied Hickman on one of his dives down to the Wallachia. They handed their bottles from the trip over to scientists at Brewlab, a research firm that specializes in beer quality. The experts found live yeast in 3 bottles of beer, and they tried to recreate the original beer with it. In the process, they discovered that the beer contained a long, lost strain of yeast that is no longer used today. They're currently looking into whether it could be useful for, or perhaps even improve, modern brewing. Number 4. HMS Pandora Wreck. The British Royal Navy ship HMS Pandora was launched in 1779. It became famous for hunting down and capturing 14 mutineers in the South Pacific, who had seized control of another British Royal Navy vessel, the HMS Bounty. Shortly into the return voyage to Europe in 1791, the Pandora ran aground on the outer Great Barrier Reef. It sank the next morning, killing 31 crew members and 4 of the mutineers. Colonial authorities in New South Wales, Australia, didn't bother trying to salvage the wreck. A trio of explorers discovered the sunken ship in 1977, and it quickly became known as one of the most significant shipwrecks in the Southern Hemisphere. The Queensland Museum carried out several excavations of the Pandora between 1983 and 1999. The team found skeletal remains of crew members, fancy shoe buckles, buttons, wax seals, and a one-of-a-kind 18th century stamp belonging to the ship's first lieutenant, John Larkin. They managed to dig up a portion of the wreck, but much of the vessel remains buried in what marine archaeologist Peter Gesner described as a marine Pompeii. Raising the Pandora would be a time-consuming and costly endeavor. The price of recovering the copper-sheathed hull alone was estimated at around $60 million in 1998, and it would undoubtedly cost a lot more now. So it's unlikely that the wreck will ever be brought to the surface, and it's unknown whether there are plans to continue excavating. Number 3. Ancient Fruit. Long ago, before Alexander the Great founded Alexandria in 331 AD, the city of Thonis Heracleion was Egypt's largest port city, but a combination of earthquakes, tsunamis, and rising sea levels weakened the ancient metropolis. At the end of the 2nd century, the ground beneath Thonis Heracleion liquefied, plunging it into the sea. Marine archaeologists have been exploring the submerged site for years, and they continue to make new discoveries. They recently discovered an array of artifacts, including Greek pottery and 2,400-year-old wicker baskets filled with fruit. Near the city's entrance, the team found a Greek funerary area known as a tumulus. A lot of the site was burned, indicating that special ceremonies took place there. Archaeologist Frank Gaudio told CNN that the most recent evidence near the tumulus dated back to the 4th century BC, even though Thonis Heracleion continued to thrive for hundreds of years after that. This is where the archaeologists found the wicker baskets, which they believe may have been left as an offering in what was once an underground room. This would help to explain the content, which include grape seeds and dome fruit from the African palm tree. These are just some of the discoveries that have been made at Thonis Heracleion, and we're chipping away at the mysteries surrounding this ancient underwater city. Number 2. Thai bullet coins. Before Thailand got its current name in 1939, it was known as Siam. Historically, Siam and the kingdoms before it used a type of currency called Phat Duang, also known as bullet money or bullet coins. They were mostly made from bars of silver bent into a round shape and stamped with marks, and were issued according to the baht system of weights, which is also what modern Thai currency is based on. Bullet coins were first commonly used sometime between the 13th and 15th century during the Sukhothai kingdom. They remained in use during the subsequent Ayutthaya, Thonburi, and Ratanakosin kingdoms. The currency was discontinued in 1904 in favor of flat coinage. Modern divers, nicknamed Indiana Jones, scour Thailand's riverbeds for ancient treasures. Copper points can reap as much as $15 each, which is twice the country's average daily wage. But bullet coins are known to fetch an even prettier penny, selling for as much as $300 each. Most people outside of Thailand wouldn't recognize a bullet coin unless they knew what they were looking for, since they don't resemble the coins that we're used to using. So to anyone with an untrained eye, these artifacts would be very mysterious to come across. Number 1. Ancient Sword. While vacationing with her family at Sweden's Vitastern Lake in 2018, 8-year-old Saga Vanasek felt something strange while looking for rocks to skip in the water. She pulled it out of the lake and noticed that it had a point on one hand and a handle on the other. Saga yelled over to her father, saying that she had found a sword. At first, Saga's father, Andy, thought she had uncovered an odd-looking stick or a branch. He asked a neighbor to take a look at the object, and they told him that it looked like a Viking sword. Andy reported the discovery to archaeologists, who initially estimated that the sword was at least 1,000 years old. Imagine the little girl's excitement when she heard that. They now believe that it may date as far back as 1,500 years, before the Vikings were around. Experts were impressed by Saga's find and reportedly said that nothing quite like it had ever been found in Scandinavia. Water levels were unusually low when Saga went scavenging for rocks, and this could explain how she stumbled upon the sword. Archaeologists carried out further excavations at the site and found a brooch dating back to the 3rd century, as well as an 18th century coin. They announced that they planned to continue exploring the lake for ancient treasures. The sword was turned over to the local museum so that it can go on display and be enjoyed by the public. Thanks for watching. Have you ever found something cool underwater? Tell us about it in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.